Welcome to another episode of Autogefuel. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the all-new, first ever BMW X3 M Competition, as well as the BMW X4M Competition. Are you interested? Come on, let's go. Let's start off by taking a look around the outside of these two SUVs. Up front, the X3 and the X4M Competition look pretty much identical. Of course, there are the quick telltale signs that these are the M Competition. For example, the glossy black kidney grille in the front, as well as this very aggressive bumper on both of these SUVs. The X3 and the X4 start showing their differences when you look at them side by side, as we do now. First of all, the X3 is 4.72 meters long and the X4 is 4.76 meters long. So a little bit longer, and of course the roofs are very different. By the way, the standard M comes with the 20-inch rims, but you can get the 21 inches with the M Competition, like the one we have here. They come as standard. Some more M Competition elements, like for example this rear view mirror. It is, of course, covered with a glossy black casing, but the top is not connected, so it gives a very aerodynamic, very cool styling effect. Now, while the X4 is a few centimeters longer, the wheelbase of the two cars, and of course the entire platform and the chassis and the drivetrain are all identical. But of course, the rear is also where they stand out and have their own individuality. The back of the X3, we see this, again, M Competition-esque rear spoiler, but a very regular, very clean design for the rear hatch. Diverting our attention now to the X4, we do see that, the two haunches for the roof spoiler, kind of similar to what we saw there on the X3 over here as well, but it's a little bit more subtle and subdued, but there's an additional black glossy lip spoiler on the back of the boot lid. We wanted to show you another color for the X4, so we've brought along the Sophisto Gray. So now let's take a look in the trunk of these two SUVs. I'm going to open this X3 as well. So of course they both have the automatic tailgate. The X3, the boot space with the seats up is 550 liters, and if you put the seats down, it's 1,600 liters. Whereas the X4 has 525 liters, and with the seats down, is 1,430 liters. Now this, for the new X3M and X4M Competition, and the standard M as well, they have completely revised the B58 engine, and now it's an all-new engine that they're calling the S58. It is still a 3-liter inline-6 turbo petrol engine, but now it's not a twin-scroll, it's a twin-turbo itself. We'll take a very detailed look at this in a minute, I promise. But it uses a lot of revisions, some new manufacturing techniques, just optimizations in every little corner that they could possibly find. And now the S58 makes 510 horsepower here in the M Competition, and still a very healthy 480 horsepower, or PS, technically metric horsepower, in the standard X3 X4M. It makes 600 Newton meters of torque, and that starts at 2,500 RPM and has a plateau all the way to 5,500 RPM, roughly thereabouts. And it redlines at around 7,200 RPM. If you're wondering where I am, make sure you follow us on Instagram, because we always post sneak peeks, behind-the-scenes pictures, and stories where we ask you for your opinions, your questions, and we cater to them on the show. So be sure to subscribe. We even have some small mini episodes that are only on IGTV. So check it out. It's all for free and it's all for fun. So here we have the key for the X3 or X4M Competition. You have the nice M stripes on the side. Very slick key, keyless entry. So if you lock it, keep it in your pocket, then come up, it unlocks automatically. The doors are already quite different between the two cars, between the X3 and the X4. So the X3, again, because of the more upright body style of the SUV, the door is also a little bit more taller. I mean, the window is also a little bit larger as well. The door has very nice materials, plush materials on the top. This carbon fiber inlay along the top with the glossy polish, a aluminium inlay below that. Really nice materials, really solid build quality, more plush materials down here. Getting inside is very easy. Tall body means tall door, and higher ground clearance means easier ingress. The seating position is completely adjustable. You can move your seats in various different ways. You can adjust the lumbar support, adjust the side bolstering amount for the backrest, and of course the steering wheel column can be adjusted for reach as well as rake. Getting inside, again, I do have to tilt my head, as you'll notice, because this roofline is a little bit more sloping. So you have to be a little bit more careful when you get inside. But apart from that, again, the seating position is completely adjustable. Your controls and the entire dashboard is, again, identical. So no differences there. Same seat adjustment controls, etc. But yeah, the roof is a little bit shorter. And that sloping line also means that the windshield is a little bit more restricted as well. Just very minute changes, but changes nevertheless. Getting inside, of course, is very easy. Tall door, as we know, and the ingress is also quite easy because of the taller body, the ground clearance. They both have the same wheelbase, like I mentioned earlier, so there is a little bit of a wheel arch that you have to kind of squeeze between, the door and the wheel arch, but it's not that bad at all. The seat is set to my driving position, like you saw. I'm 5'8" or 1.7 meters. Plenty of knee room, although the back of these sport seats are not really scooped out, but I fit here quite fine. Again, getting inside, I have to navigate this wheel arch, navigate this gap, and navigate my head by tilting it to get inside. So it is a little bit more compact back here, and of course, if I put my head all the way back, headroom is just about adequate. 5'8", 1.7 meters, my driving position. Feet are very happy, enough leg room, enough knee room. But yeah, Thomas, even Jonas, you're quite tall. I don't think you would be quite happy to sit back here. And that panoramic sunroof that we saw, which extended behind my head in the X3, is already stopping right here. So I feel a bit claustrophobic, a little bit hemmed in because there's so much of black around me. The windows are small. The sunroof is already stopping here, so I have just the black headliner on top of me. The interior of the X3 is very similar to the version that we've seen at launch. So that was launched back in the end of 2017. So the materials are really plush on the top. A very nice integrated design along the side of the door coming into the dashboard. Good materials here, an inlay of aluminum effect. And of course, that carbon fiber effect that we saw on the side of the door is also here in the middle. Overall, to be very honest, I don't think this is very exciting. I think it's a little bit dated. Some of the new AMGs have a much more interesting design. I mean, it doesn't have to be outlandish. This is very classic. Of course, a very standard BMW with the floating display, the iDrive, very horizontal 10.25 touchscreen. We'll talk about this later on. but in my opinion, I think they could have really upped their game. The steering wheel is the M Competition steering wheel, and I like the steering wheel a lot. It's quite simple, 3-spoke, very clean design, nice grip, a dual contrast stitching with blue and red along the edges. Actually, it's got a very nice grip, and because of the 8-speed automatic gearbox, you have the paddle shifters in the rear just behind you, which turn with the wheel. Controls for your audio and telephony. Heated steering wheel button over there for the adaptive cruise control on the left. But I'm sure you've already noticed the M1, M2, 2 toggle switches, the buttons up here. What do? Well, these are for the driving mode. Right now, as you can see in the cockpit, we're in the normal mode with the efficient for the engine, comfort for the suspension, and comfort for the steering wheel. But if I press the M1, now I'm in sport, sport, and sport for all 3 elements. And if I press M2, I need to confirm by pressing it again. And now it's in the Sport Plus mode for everything. The traction control is also limited, and the X-Drive is now the M-tuned X-Drive, which is what we see in the M5 already. Very much rear biased, but still can send power to the front if needed. So these buttons are really cool. It's a very quick way to turn on and off the different drive modes. You don't have to toggle through many switches. First thing, before we get to the road, before we talk about the car and how it's to live with, you gotta start with the M Competition out on the racetrack. That's where it's meant to be, that's what it's born to do. And we are here in Monticello, just a couple hours outside of New York City. So and I have with me the X4M Competition. So the first thing I wanna do is hit this red button over here which says M2, and it says confirm, which means I am in charge now because the stability control and the traction management is now in dynamic mode. Let's kick it down and let's push forward. The engine sounds really nice. The steering also is very heavy now. It gets more and more heavier as you go up the different driving modes from comfort to sport and then sport plus. The seats are also pretty good. Like with most BMWs, they are a bit on the firmer side, but out on the racetrack like this, that definitely helps because it kind of keeps you in place a little bit better. This all-wheel drive system also means that it allows you to have a little bit of slip with the X-Drive, and the traction control being in more dynamic mode, it allows for a little bit more slip, but still has the ability to throw power to the front and just pull you out of a corner safely. So this car helps you feel like a hero, even if you have, not much experience or skill out on the racetrack, which, there's nothing wrong with that, of course. Most people don't ever, spend a lot of time on the racetrack, of course. So that way, this car allows you to push it and have fun, but it's still smart enough to know when it needs to step in and help you out. The brakes are also upgraded brakes here for the M Competition. 4 pistons up front in the caliper in the front rotor, ventilated and drilled, of course. A single piston in the rear, but plenty of stopping power. Again, if you come in a bit hot into a corner, you have a choice. You can either hit the brakes hard and let the X-Drive torque vectoring front and active rear differential sort you out, or you can put your foot down and let the tail kick out a little bit and use that rotation to keep you pointed in the right direction. The AMG GLC somehow feels a lot more brute, and that's probably part of, that's how they want it to be as well. That's kind of the image that AMGs have. They're large sledgehammers. They're not really meant for precision. Of course, they are very capable machines on the racetrack, but this somehow feels like it's born to do this. The M Competition specifically, the 600 Newton meters, the 510 horsepower, and just coupled with this great chassis. As far as SUVs go, it's really trying to show off that it doesn't hold it back and it can compete with the sports cars. Alright, so we know that the X4 and the X3M Competition are firecrackers out on the racetrack, but let's be honest, even if you do get one of these cars, you're probably not going to be driving it on the racetrack that often. So what really matters is its everyday mannerisms out on the open road, and of course once in a while when you do get to take it on some nice twisty roads, that's where it should really be fun and be easy to live with. So let's start off driving down this interstate that we are heading down towards New York City. The road surfacing is not the best right here, so it's also a good opportunity for us to kind of test how comfortable this X3M competition or the X4M competition would be. For all practical purposes, let's keep in mind that since the X4 and the X3 have the same chassis and drivetrain and suspension, you can draw the same conclusions for the driving behavior for both of them. In terms of comfort, the suspension is a little bit of a hit and miss, I would say. While it is definitely not uncomfortable or unbearable, it is still a little bit on the stiffer side nevertheless, and some of the more, bigger potholes or some of the bigger undulations are felt a little bit more prominently than I would have liked, and perhaps than the standard M40i would. But it's not something that you can't live with. It's not that terrible. It's just a little bit on the firmer side than usual. The sound insulation is also really nice. There's not much of wind noise that gets filtered in. There's not much of the traffic noise that gets filtered in either. So the acoustic damping is also really nice. The materials throughout the cabin are also really well and well made and very plush. So this also helps make the car feel a lot more refined and just a very pleasant, quiet place to be. No buzzing, no rattling, no droning sounds. The tires are also very quiet. There's very little tire noise coming into the cabin as well. So overall, in terms of the acoustic damping, it's doing a really great job. Then in terms of the seat, well, generally I also find that BMW seats are also on the firmer side. And while that's great when you're on the racetrack, with these knee pads on the center console, and if you inflate the side bolstering, it really holds you in place. You don't have to make yourself rigid, and that way you're not compromising your handwork and your feet work. That's great, but on the flip side, when you're out on the road on a long drive, it is very supportive, but I would have liked a little bit more of a softer seat. And this is something that we generally we notice with BMW cars quite often, is that they tend to have a little bit firmer padding in the cushions. Let's summarize today's episode of the all-new, first ever BMW X3M Competition and the X4M Competition. By the way, the mileage that we saw towards the end of the drive, with a lot of highway driving in the eco mode, I was able to see numbers around 9 liters for 100 kilometers, which I think is very much acceptable for a car which has a 510 horsepower engine. So, the price for the X3M, the standard M, starts at around 85,000 euros. The X4 is always about 2,000 euros more. So the X4M is about 87,000 euros. If you want the competition, the X3M competition starts at 94,000 euros, and the X4M competition consequently starts at around 96,000 euros. And boy, that's pretty steep if you ask me. So what are you getting for that much money? Near as makes no difference, 100 grand. Is this car worth 100 grand? Well, let's talk about it. The engine, I think, is a firecracker of an engine. The X3M has 480 horsepower, which I think already is very good enough to haul this car around and really give you that exciting, sporty performance. But if you get the 510 horsepower, you're able to milk out every last ounce out of this engine. So yeah, it is a pretty great engine that you're getting for the money. The chassis as well, it's been fine-tuned by M Performance, so the adaptive dampers, the X-Drive, which is also a sporty X-Drive, rear wheel biased, also provides a lot of dynamic fun. The M suspension also allows you to have a pretty comfortable ride, albeit it is still on the stiffer side in the end. And because of this, the geometry in the suspension linkages, the turning circle is a bit wide. But I think overall, due to the compact dimensions of this SUV, you will find it fairly easy to navigate within the city. So I think the package itself is really appealing. Some of the things I didn't like and I wish they could have done a little bit better, for example, would be the infotainment screen. I think they need to upgrade this a little bit, try to optimize and make it more intuitive. And apart from that, the seats are a little bit firm, as with most BMWs, but that's a little bit more of an objective personal take. On long drives, that support that it offers is definitely pretty useful. So overall, I think for 100 grand, if you have the money, I would definitely recommend you have to check this car out. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you're new here. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We always post pictures, questions, stories, and you can see a lot of behind the scenes content as well. It's me and Jonas signing off. We'll see you next time.